Well, good Wednesday morning to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for plugging into our call live. And for those that are watching a delayed version, watching it through our YouTube channel, we want to welcome you. If you're brand new to our call, I just want to go through a couple of quick things. We're the Corona Chamber of Commerce, and our focus is through our board of directors, which is made up of 26 volunteer business leaders that set policy and direction. One of the main key elements that we strive on is to be very active in the advocacy outreach. It has been stated several times that if you're not at the table, that you're probably on the menu. There's been some craziness that has happened in Sacramento, even crazier than what we could have even imagined. And we'll be getting into that in just a couple of minutes. But I wanted to welcome you here. Our board has a board of directors is run by our board chair for 2022. Her name is Paul Binder-Badisha. She will be sharing a couple of words in a little bit. But also we have a chair for our advocacy outreach. And he is also on our board of directors. He is the Honorable Jeff Miller. Jeff is a former state assembly member. He is retired from that, but while he was serving our area in the state of California, he was always working on behalf of the business community. He alone has his own independent business. He understands what it takes to turn the lights on, to pay the insurance policies, to pay the wages, and so many other costs that each and every one of us go through as business owners or managers. Jeff has the ability to be able to talk common sense into legislation. And when he was up there, he was able to pull both sides of the aisles together to really make an impact for the betterment of our community here in Corona, as well as throughout the state of California. Jeff is also a former mayor for the city of Corona and city council member. And the entire time that he was doing his public service, he also was a small business owner. Please welcome the Honorable Jeff Miller.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate the kind and warm introduction. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's surviving the heat out there. And we've got a very interesting meeting planned for today. The last week after we had met on Wednesday, several things came down that were really devastating to the business community, courtesy of our legislature and our governor, unfortunately. And again, as we've said time and time again, we'll praise where we need to praise and we'll criticize where we need to criticize, regardless of what party is in control. But unfortunately, this week, some legislation was passed and the governor signed some bills that were really devastating to the business community. So I know Jeff Gibson will get into that more in detail. So with that, let's thank Altura Credit Union for sponsoring our meeting today. Altura is a community-based credit union here to successfully serve its members with all their financial goals. Altura board members are local leaders who volunteer their time and are deeply committed to the community. Unlike a corporate bank, they understand that differentiating the needs of everyday individuals. Thank you, Altura, for sponsoring this meeting. There's a little chat button on the bottom. If you have any questions for the chamber host or us, feel free to use that and just send your questions in. And before I get into Anthony, we're gonna start off on some positive notes. So tomorrow is opening day for the NFL. Woohoo! Finally. And the Rams are playing first game of the season, Thursday night football. Rams are playing the Buffalo Bills, and they're going to be raising their Super Bowl banner from last year's victory. I don't know if I'm more excited about the game or I'm more excited about the halftime show, which is Ozzy Osbourne, but we'll see. I'll give a report back next week on what I think about that. With that, I'd like to ask our chair of the board, Paul Bender Badesha, if she'd like to make a few comments before we get started.
Hello, good morning. Can everybody see me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can see you, Paul Bender. Go ahead.
Okay, good. I can't see myself because I just pulled up at my office after the grand opening at St. Edward's. Thank you, Jeff. I just wanted to just kind of say quickly, I know most of us had the privilege to have Labor Day as a holiday and it's an important holiday. We obviously are recognizing the hard work of workers across America, and it was hard won and hard fought for. And many of us work extremely hard in our capacity to ensure that there's good working conditions in our businesses or organizations for workers. So I really support that. But at the same time, that only works. We're only able to deliver good working conditions and practices when we have successful and profitable businesses. So I have a very balanced view to the whole thing. And as a franchisee, particularly, I'm very perturbed by what was passed with the Fast Food Act, just because I think that it's part of a continuing trend to attack franchising in California, which actually has been the way that many people like me have been able to build a successful business. My husband and I had very little in savings, but we did have equity in our house, and that's what enabled me to start my journey of being a business owner. So thank you for what our chamber does every day to support us, but I am concerned. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the fact that we also celebrate employees and appreciate what they do for us. But let's continue to fight for the rights of businesses to operate in California, particularly franchising, which has given people like me with very little to their name and money the opportunity to build a successful business. Hope we can keep it that way. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Paul Bender. Thank you for your leadership and your action, your call to action this week. Dozens of us sent letters, emails, and made phone calls on a variety of bills that we were opposing, including the bill that Paul Bender just mentioned on the restaurants. And calls were made to the governor's office, but I'll let Jeff get into that a little bit more. But we did have a call to action. Everybody stepped up. We did what we needed to do. Unfortunately, sometimes the political winds are blowing in a way that it makes it very, very difficult to affect change. So before we get into Anthony's announcements, I want to thank our nonprofits that jump on our call. I see we have Danny from Peppermint Ridge, and I see we have Ryan from Corona Norco Family YMCA. I'm assuming you guys are still hiring, and I'm assuming there's some sort of event coming on or item that you want to promote. Nothing today.
We're always hiring. We're hiring, in our childcare. We're hiring in our aquatics. We're looking at potential hiring for sports. Always looking for volunteers for different things like coaching, different things like events. So always open to anything like that. If you guys have anybody to send our way. One of the things that we just are pushing pretty hard right now is our teen program, our after school teen program, and our youth and government program. So if you guys have any teens in the community that are looking for leadership experience or just a safe place to be after school, send them my way, and we'd be more than happy to help.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Danny, did you want to jump in real quick?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. We're just thrilled to be in Corona on such a lovely day. We also are hiring direct training staff, and I'm especially looking for any registered nurses or LVNs that want to work with some awesome people. So, that's it.
Great, you guys. Thank you very much. Creating jobs, hiring people. That's what our chamber is all about, is helping people get back to work. And so thank you again to our nonprofits. For the years that I was involved at that aspect of our community, we could not operate without our nonprofits. As a community, they are so important. All right, Anthony, you got some updates and some announcements.
I do. Thank you so much, Jeff. The first announcement that I would like to touch on today is actually happening this week into next week. As you all know, this year will be the 21st anniversary of 9/11. So the Corona Chamber, in partnership with the City of Corona and ABC Hopes, will be honoring and remembering those 2,977 brave Americans who perished that day. We ask the community to join us for this week-long event, starting tomorrow, September 8th at 7 p.m. We will be placing 2,977 flags at the Historic Civic Center. We will also be having a special ceremony early on September 11th. And also each day from September 8th to the 13th, we will have volunteers standing watch in 4-hour shifts, starting from 6 p.m. all the way until 6 a.m. So we are seeking as many volunteers as possible to help set up the flags, stand watch, read the list of names on the 11th, and help us collect the flags on the 13th. So for all the detailed information and to sign up to volunteer, please visit the link that I will be putting in the chat. Thank you so much for that. And then lastly, I want to touch on our next Friday, Good Morning Corona event. We have a really interesting event this month, which will be our candidates forum with those running for city council. This will be your opportunity to hear from the candidates themselves, as well as ask them a few questions. So early bird pricing for tickets ends this Friday. So make sure you grab your tickets now. And we do have some sponsorship and exhibitor tables also open, just a few of those left. So again, check the link that I will be putting in the chat. And with that, I will pass it back over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Anthony. That was quick. Okay, let's get right into the meat of the matter. And I'll also, Ryan and Danny, put your contact information in the chat if somebody wants to get involved and help, volunteer, or more importantly, make a donation. Put all that in there for us. Now I'd like to introduce Jeff Gibson. Jeff Gibson is our political consultant that works directly for the chamber. And Jeff, for over 35 years, has specialized in political campaigns and government relations and government affairs. He has worked and specialized in areas related to housing and transportation, environmental issues, Joshua trees, and a variety of other industries, as well as he was the author in 2006 of Jessica's Law. So with that, Jeff, you are up.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Morning.
Can you see me? Hello.
Yes. Yes.
All right, and we are off. So thank you very much for your calls and letters over the last several days of the legislature. They were absolutely key on each of the issues that we have discussed. There were a number of successes, and so in fact, a couple of key pieces of the governor's climate change agenda were defeated at the last minute. And again, just for everybody who's joining us for the first time or is unfamiliar, we all understand we live in California. We're all happy to be living in California. We are all committed to a cleaner, better, safer environment for everyone, that whether it is someone being able to open their store and sell their goods without being rushed by 1,000 people trying to steal everything that isn't tied down, whether that be the air you breathe, whether that be the manufacturing process that you're engaged in. We all understand that this is a very highly regulated market and are happy to be here. That is not in dispute. What is in dispute is that the state over the last 30 years has had, especially has put into overdrive a series of environmental rules and duplicate regulations that even before they are implemented, they are then updated. And so as a business owner, you aren't even able to absorb the cost of one update, for instance, the installation of vast amounts of natural gas powered emissions control systems before the state comes along and says, well, natural gas is, which, by the way, as of yesterday, during our peak, many of you on your cell phones got a little announcement from the governor's office and ISO, which is the independent system operator of the state, to expect a blackout. So with the sun shining and obviously being very powerful and the winds blowing, obviously very powerful, we hit a near record of 27% of the electrons floating around the system coming from renewable energy. So that is after a $2.5 trillion investment. 48% of that energy came from, anybody want to guess? Natural gas. And natural gas is not part of our strategy after 2030. There will be no natural gas allowed in the state of California after 2030. So imagine if it took us $2.5 trillion in 30 years to get to a point where 1 out of every 4 electrons are from renewable energy. Imagine the expense that is planned to get us fully renewable. Fully renewable does not include nuclear, although we are now going to have a nuclear power plant, the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, open for the next 25 years. That is good. That is a good development because that plant alone, which is about 4 football fields across, provides 9% of the energy in the state of California. So think about that. 4 football fields provides carbon-free energy for 9% of the state, and you have massive amounts of the desert, of pristine lands being plowed under and concreted over for solar energy, and you're only getting 27% from that. So 9% comes from nuclear, 48 comes from natural gas, 27% comes from renewable sources. And you might ask what the rest comes from. The rest comes from hydro, which are dams, which we no longer build in the state, even though we could, and from coal. Coal, you don't say. And the amount of coal that we are now buying is up higher than it has been in decades. So we've got a long way to go here in the state of California towards understanding what the legislation. The short of it is, we have to focus on what the legislation actually means that we passed, and making sure that that's implementable before we go out and start putting in more regulations. So let's dive into the good, the bad, the ugly. Paul Binder brought it up. We've talked about it extensively. AB 257, which is known as the FAST Act, which is for Fast Food Recovery Act, which in the state of California, wages for franchise fast food have never been higher. So we're not sure what they're recovering from. But it has implemented the age-old solution that goes all the way back to Hammurabi of wage controls. And by the way, the United States, the only time the United States during a war has ever had a reversal in productivity so bad that we had to ration food was in the 1940s, when we had, anybody? Wage controls. So we had 10 years of horrible economy. Anybody who's on this phone and remembers 1971 through 1981 remembers wage and price controls. With inflation now, the win buttons that were floating around on both sides of the aisle, and all we needed was another government expert and another committee, until, of course, it ended up that the Federal Reserve, which tomorrow is supposed to, or today is supposed to raise rates another 0.75%, meaning that back to back to back, it has raised interest rates faster than at any time since 1982. Good luck to you out there. We will remember everyone fondly. So in any case, so lots of things happening, but while they are attacking franchises, and while we definitely do not like that, what this is going to be doing is this has already changed. The author of this bill, former Assembly member Lorena Gonzalez, if you remember when she introduced this, when she was a member of the state legislature, she promised that all this would do was ensure that franchised fast food workers are receiving their minimum wage. Now, of course, that did not have, well, let me sum it up. She immediately, once it was passed through the assembly, was hired by the sponsor, the California Labor Federation, and is now the head of the California Labor Federation. And off the floor, right after it passed and was sent to the governor, crowed that fast food workers have a new minimum wage, and that new minimum wage is $22 an hour. And that as soon as the legislature gets back in session, they're going to be going after every other franchisee to make sure that the minimum wage of a franchised non-union shop is $22 an hour. And so now, of course, if you want to unionize, then your minimum wage can be $17 an hour, which is the state standard. But I guess things are cheaper in union shops. But that's how that goes. So on from there, happy to answer any questions, Anthony, if we've got any questions.
There are no questions that have come in.
Okay, all right. Stunning everyone into silence as usual. Moving on to SB 1137. And on that, our members, I'm sorry?
Just on the Fast Food Act, can you talk about the couple other items? It sets up the board at the state level, and it allows workers to sue. There's a few other things in there that are really problematic, aside from $22 an hour.
The whole thing is problem. Yeah. So it sets up private attorney general actions, which, if you remember a couple of years ago, private attorney general actions. So for almost 35 years in this state, California did groundbreaking work in the Americans with Disabilities Act. We were the most responsive. There was a widespread adoption from businesses, as Bobby can speak to. And then there was an interesting thing that was passed about 10 years ago, and it was called the Private Attorney General's Act. And the legislature got together and thought that people didn't have enough access to lawyers. And so you could be whizzing by the Chamber of Commerce building. They could be whizzing by in a car past, or electric scooter, or I don't know, a go-kart, and look at a building and say, I don't think there's enough access for Americans with disabilities in that building. And so, or you could be sitting behind a computer and say, I want to get a lawyer, and I want to send a letter to every single business on 6th Street and say, I drove down 6th Street and I was offended that there wasn't enough Americans with disabilities access. And so therefore, if you, Mr. Business Owner, send me $8,000, I will not sue you. And so we worked with Senator Roth and Assemblymember Cervantes, and we did pass, I'm sorry, at the time it was Assemblymember Linder, but Assemblymember Cervantes has worked with us since on this issue. And it became a issue where it was no longer about the number of handicap spots in front of your disabled spots for parking in front of your location, or even access, because people weren't even coming in. They're called private attorney general actions. They're called PAGA. That means that anyone, whether an innocent bystander, someone who's never even been in your business, can send you a letter and say you have an intent to sue, and you and the person who is writing the letter, not you, the person who is writing the letter has the same rights as the Attorney General of the state of California. And so increasingly, two things have been happening. The legislature continues to add the right to PAGA to bills. And on top of it, the legislature slinks back 8 years later and quietly removes the right to PAGA businesses once some huge 10, 15, 30, $50 million fraud ring has been exposed, as what happened in Corona. And this is what's going to be happening now to any fast food franchise of more than 30 restaurants. And by the way, that 30 restaurants, it doesn't even have to be 30 restaurants. If, for instance, you receive concession services, or you have a commissary type services. So if you're Taco Bell, for instance, and you get things to your location that are par baked, and you have, say, 10 restaurants, and you've got 20 vendors for your rolls and your other items, and those come from 20 different locations, which I've just described almost every single fast food place in the country. Congratulations, you fall underneath this bill. And once appointed, the commission will then decide actually which type of restaurant and which type of business qualifies as a fast food restaurant. And I would just caution you that in the state of California, a bumblebee is a fish. So just go through in your mind what is available to the state legislature. And it doesn't even be the state legislature at this point. It's an appointed commission. So before the Fish and Game Commission, the Fish and Game Commission considers the bumblebee to be a fish. And so, so this is where we are in this state, unfortunately. And sometimes when you say those types of things out loud, people look at you crazy until they realize, oh, you're not joking, and you are not crazy. So, but does that answer your question, Jeff? So
Yes.
the bill, yeah. So the bill passed out of the Assembly. AB 257 passed out of the Assembly with Assembly Member Cervantes voting yes. It passed out of the Senate with Senator Roth not voting. So that means that he did not. It's not that he voted no. It's that he was present, but he did not vote. And which has the same net effect as voting no, but for some political considerations that each of you can imagine. SB 1137, I think I described that accurately, Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay. SB 1137, which basically ends oil production in the state of California. So if you were one of 15 school districts in California that rely on oil revenue from oil leases in your district, and you are cut off from a good portion of state funding because you have local sources of funding, then it's tough to be you. And if you live within 3,200 feet of anything involved in oil production, so if you live within 3,200 feet of a capped well that was capped in the early 70s, congratulations on your deed is now going to go that you are within a unsafe zone for hazardous waste. And so that will go as a rider on your deed. That will go into escrow documents. That will go into pretty much anything that will ever involve you either getting a mortgage, insuring your home, or selling your home. So isn't that fun? Even though there is no environmental evidence that 3,200 feet, 3/4 of a mile, essentially, for almost all of the types of oil infrastructure. So think about the jet fuel lines that run underneath major highways. You live within 3,200 feet of the 91. You live within 3,200, or your business is within 3,200 feet of the 91. Congratulations. There's a jet fuel line that runs underneath there. There's a jet fuel line that runs underneath most of the 15. There's a number of different types. I don't know if anybody notices, but when 98% of people get into vehicles in the state of California and they turn the engine over, they're using oil, an oil-based product to do that. So there's oil infrastructure all over the state of California that falls underneath this bill, and you now are going to be seeing that more and more on your deeds, on your and in your insurance businesses. So that's just something that we're going to have to deal with. We lobbied that very hard. It passed. The governor has not signed it yet. In that, Cervantes voted yes, and Roth did not vote. So, and I'm happy to take any questions on that as well. It affects about 48,000 jobs are going to be walking out of the Southern California world. Almost all of them are union. All of them pay over $125,000 a year for the most part. So those will be going on to some other state starting December 31st.
Anthony, any questions at this point?
There are no questions, so feel free to continue.
Hey, Jeff, can you give us some good news?
Well, yeah. So the next three bills are actually good news. So SB 846, which is California's pirouette on nuclear energy. It passed. It is on the governor's desk. Both Cervantes and Roth voted yes. The part of the bill that we did not like, where the state of California gives $27 billion, which is the guaranteed profit for the 25-year operation of Diablo Canyon. They give that up front in a no recourse loan to PG&E to keep the operations running on something that does not require fuel and is a perpetual motion machine. So, and the bonus is that they get to keep the 27 billion as they earn it over the next 25 years. So we've doubled their profit margin. And as we know, PG&E always operates very, very, the PG&E will, I'm sure, start to act as a more responsible corporate entity because of the gift of $27 billion. By the way, when I started in the state legislature, the actual total budget, which was still the largest in the United States, was $38 billion. So you can, I don't look that old. I don't have that much gray hair. So it wasn't that long ago, but we move on. AB 21. So that was a major victory for us because there was no, Diablo Canyon would have been shut now without action. And so we would have lost this last week. Imagine with all the rolling blackouts, with all of the things that you've already faced, imagine what would have happened with 10% less power. AB 2133, and by the way, that's how close the state gets. The state gets within 4 weeks of losing 10% of its power, and then it introduces a bill. So just keep that in mind. Two final ones, AB 2133, which was a major bill. It failed in the assembly. It was part of the governor's plan. It was a 40% additional cut in carbon emissions by 2040, or actually, I'm sorry, by 2035. And it would have been devastating. That was the bill in which one of the strategies that was proposed, and this is a strategy that was proposed by the administration, was to implement a DMV lottery for car registrations. and immediately not allow 17 million cars to operate legally on roads in the state of California. So that bill failed in the assembly. We were very active in lobbying against it. It failed, and Senator Roth voted yes on it to move it over to the assembly from the Senate, where it had been amended to recognize what the governor had wanted to see. Assemblymember Cervantes, when it was in the state assembly, did not vote on the bill, so she has no vote recorded. And then finally, a late week win for us, AB 2840 remained stalled in the state Senate. That was the bill that would have eliminated smart manufacturing from communities like Corona by implementing a 1,000-foot setback for anything, any goods movement involving trucks or goods. That's a pretty thorough description. And so there was an attempt, there was talk that it would be coming back at the very end, and that did not happen, in part because we were lobbying it very hard. Previously, Assemblymember Cervantes voted yes when it passed out of the assembly by 41 votes, so she was the margin on that. And in the state Senate, our Senator Roth did not have the opportunity to vote on it. So that's where we are there. One final thing, Anthony, the next slide. We are opposing Prop 30. Prop 30 is a 1 3/4 point increase in the corporate income, in the state income tax for those classified as millionaires, to pay largely to Uber and other types of gig businesses to offset their cost for moving to electric cars. So in any case, you can see from a chart here, this is a chart from the Federal Reserve tracking the collection of corporate taxes in state by state. California, of course, is the darkest of dark greens. One of the things that the Federal Reserve did not track in this map, I wanted you to have a map so you could understand the scale of this. There's really only 4 or 5 states that even get close to California. If you added up the state collections in those states, California would get very close to equaling all of those put together. So the idea that we need to have more taxes in this state is ludicrous. So Governor Newsom has endorsed against it. Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association has endorsed against it. The teachers unions have endorsed against it, but it does have quite a bit of money behind it under the guise of fighting wildfires and climate change. So in any case, happy to discuss anything that you might have from there.
Jeff, go back to the first slide real quickly. You've got a call to action.
Call to action is to call the governor's office at 916-445-2841 to have him veto SB 1137. We are really up against it on that bill. That is a bill that he has indicated, well, it was introduced at his request in the last week of the legislature. But that does not mean that he should not be hearing, and his office should not be hearing from us. I did hear from a senior member of the Assembly Majority Caucus, Democrat caucus, that the governor was refusing to meet with oil industry at any time in the last 4 weeks of the legislature. So I mean, that's how we're treating people that represent the employers of over 300,000 workers in the state of California. We're banning them from being in the state and not even meeting to discuss how to implement that. So in any case, that's where we are. But yes, please call the governor, 916-445-2841, and urge that he not sign SB 1137. SB 1137. Do not sign it.
Anthony, any questions?
There are no questions.
Stunned us into silence again, Jeff.
Yes, I apologize.
All right, we're that's okay. We're way over time. I wanted to thank you, Jeff. Anthony will put up the contact information for our assembly member and our senator. If you need to contact their offices or we have a call to action, there's their information. I want to thank a few folks that are on the call. From the fine city of Wildemar, Kimberly Davidson. Hello, Kimberly. And a former member of the Corona City Council and executive director, CEO of the YMCA for decades, Yolanda Carrillo. Thank you both for coming on the call. Again, I want to thank Altura Credit Union, and they provide accurate, consistent, and personalized service with every interaction, every time. Learn more at alturacu.com. Are there any updates from the hospital? Sam, Linda?
COVID is totally steady. We have 5 to 6 patients a day. The majority of the patients are unvaccinated, and we only have 1 patient in ICU.
Great. Thank you, Sam. If you'd like to sponsor a future business briefing, please contact the chamber. Be sure to join us next week, September 14th. That is my birthday, and I want everybody to be very nice to me. And we will adjourn today's meeting, and go Rams tomorrow night. Stay cool out there, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, everyone.
Bye.